Hey everyone, welcome to TRS. We are live. Hey everyone, welcome to TRS. We are live with Nug Nahrgang. You've seen him in a bunch of things, especially if you're from Canada. He's been, it sounds like I have a girlfriend, she's in Canada, you don't know her. But Nug has been and done a lot of things. Currently, he is the host and creator of the $5 podcast. I want to make sure I say it right. I don't have my notes in front of me.
Just $1 words.
$1 words. But I'll let you describe it. It's going to be easier.
Oh, sure. I do an interview. It's just a standard interview with somebody. And at the beginning of the interview, we both get a list of 5 random words. And for every word they get me to say, they get $1. But for every word on my list that I get them to say, they get $1. And we see who makes money at the end of the show.
And what I really love about your bet, so to speak, within the show is it encourages you to talk about things you might not originally think of. If you get a word like rainbow, suddenly you have to figure out a topic that could go. And I love the fact that you have to improv it. You have to think about it in the heat of the moment. And so does the other person. So the topics really do fly in different directions on your show, which is really refreshing. And one of the reasons when I saw what you were doing, I had to talk to you. So how did you come up with this idea?
Well, I had initially approached I've been a guest on many podcasts on the Sonar Network, which is a podcast network up here in Canada. And there's a lot of improv based podcasts. But when I pitched an improv podcast to them and they were like, oh, yeah, it's a good idea. We could probably do that. And then I said, but, because my brain works very differently than other people, I said, what don't you have? Like, what's a hole that you have that I might be able to help out with? And they said, we don't have an interview show. Comedians come through Toronto all the time to headline at various clubs, the Comedy Bar, or sometimes someone's in town from the stage shooting a movie and they're at Second City and they're in town promoting something and they don't have a place to go. And Sonar is known as a comedy podcast network primarily. So I said, oh, you don't have an interview show. So I sat down with a friend of mine and was like, if I had to do an interview show, what would I do? And all we kept coming back to was the old game shows from the 50s and the old time radio, where it was like, literally, here's $5 if you can get me to tell you that I'm a chef, So we were like, let's make it the lowest stakes possible, but hype it up like it's $1 million. And then, make it, there's historically not much money in podcasting. So let's try and make $1 off of every show.
That's awesome. I love it. You're making money. You're doing something original. Oh, sorry. I had a note pop up. The question that I most wanted to talk to you about is you deal with a lot of comedians on your show. You have them on a lot because, as you said, that's your Sonar is a comedy oriented podcast network. Do you prefer interviewing what you think is the real person or the character, somebody who's like on? Or do you like to get to the real person?
Most of the people I've had on the show, I'd say 40 some shows at this point, and I'd say I've personally known more than 30 of them, so that I could actually call them and text them and say, be on the show. I haven't interviewed a character yet, as far as I know. I've just interviewed friends of mine or people I know. So I've been real lucky that way. I haven't had any sad clowns on. I feel good about that. Like, it didn't really, we didn't dive into like, why do we do this? My dad, like, we never got into anything like that. But like just real people, just my friends or people I know I've had on the show.
So what about wrestlers? Do you get the real person?
Well, I sure did with my Dalton Castle, who is a wrestler I know. He was on the show, and he's very real. When you want to interview him and talk to him, he's not the proud peacock that he is on TV, which is great. And awesome. Then I've also had on RJ City, who's a fixture on AEW's programming as a backstage interviewer, and also he does a YouTube thing for them on Sundays called Hey EW, where he interviews people on the show. And it's basically Between Two Ferns, but with wrestlers. And but RJ is the same off camera as he is on camera. So the cool thing about him is everybody thinks it's an act. So when he's in the ring, when he was wrestling and he would completely insult his opponent on the microphone, they'd get backstage after the match and they were like, hey, you said those really funny things about me. Those jokes were great. And he'd be like, jokes.
Yeah. Totally.
Sure.
That's awesome. I've been looking to get a wrestler on this show I'm not hitting you up for contacts, but I would. My thing is, I would like to interview the real person and like find out what it's like to interact with the people you're supposed to hate on stage, or what it's really like. I want to find out like the backstage stuff of what your daily like is life. So, you know, if you know anybody that's interested in like just spilling the beans, I'd love to do that. But I always worry about getting the character. Like, I'd love to interview Dice Clay, but I don't want to interview Dice Clay. You know,
lots of I do know a lot of independent wrestlers based out of the Pittsburgh area, so I could probably hook you up with one.
Please send them my way. I'm all about it.
Absolutely.
That'd be great. Yeah. So, where would you? What would be an ideal next step for you for someone to interview? Like, who's your dream for 2024?
Oh well, really, so far I've had like, I mean, it's weird in Canada. The joke is that in entertainment, we all have each other's phone number. And so within the first 3 episodes of my show, I texted Colin Mockery and asked him if he wanted to be on it. And he was like, yeah, sure, I'm home this weekend. So like, it was like a dream. Like, he's a friend. And so it was great. But people were like, my American friends, how'd you get him? I'm like, I just texted him. He happened to be home and had time.
You worked with him too, didn't you?
Oh, a ton. I've worked with Colin far too much. We should probably have a restraining order against each other at this point. But as far as go-to guests, like I'm a podcast fan anyway, so I'd love to get Paul F. Tompkins. I'd love to get Jimmy Pardo. I'd love to get any of the scene, like Scott Ackerman or any of the gang from Comedy Bang Bang. But I know them all adjacently. I've met Paul, I've met Scott. A lot of the people who are guests on their show are friends of mine. So like, I could, like, with one phone call or a text, I could ask, but I also don't want to bother anybody. So it's a weird thing when I'm the producer of my own show. I host it, edit it, and produce it myself. And I'm kind of in charge of getting the guests. And every week I'm like, I don't want to bug somebody to come and do this, but if I got to keep going, I got to keep bugging people.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
I'm just saying, Nug, if you ever need a second to hang outside of Earwolf Studios, I will gladly join you in that endeavor. Not a problem at all.
And I just keep getting more and more as far as Earwolf goes. Like, I've done improv up here for years, and Lisa Gilroy came through, and now she's like, she improvised up here forever, and Lisa's a friend. I could call Lisa.
Stop it.
So it's just very weird.
Yeah, I get that. Like, especially when you know them better. I feel weird as somebody who doesn't know most of the people I interview or have met, and I'm trying to build these relationships. But like, I also always think about what's too far. Like, I send one email after we say, "Hey, your interview's up," and I don't want to bug them. I'm not friends with them like on that level. Like, maybe I could ask them again in a year if they want to come back. But I hate being that guy. Like, you did me a favor, thank you. Let's hang out. We're buddies. Like, so like that line. Like, you're a professional that has a job.
I had that experience today. I actually got to interview comedy writer Mike Sachs, who Mike wrote a great book called And Here's the Kicker, and it's him interviewing comedy writers, and he's since written a bunch of books. And what I love that he does is has written 2 or 3 books that are, in the 80s, guys, there was a time of, it used to be called the 80s a long time ago, but you'd go see a movie and then you'd go to the bookstore and there would be a novelization of the movie.
Yes.
So
usually written by Alan Dean Foster.
Well, Mike has written 3 books that are the novelization of a movie that didn't exist.
That's beautiful.
So one's called Stinker Lets Loose, and of course it's about an ape driving a CB or using a CB radio, driving a truck. There's
a bear.
There's a John Hughes one called like Pretentious in Pink or something like that. And then the third one is called Slouchers, and it's a 90s one. So he's done all these fake books that look like the real deal, and they look dog-eared, and there's production stills in them, and it's all fake. But he's fascinating. So we had this great interview today and had a good time. And then next thing you know, he's like, hey, here's my phone number if you ever want to chat. And I was like, huh? Well, okay. Like, I'm just like, I'm going to go hang out with him in Brooklyn. Should I ever go to Brooklyn? But yeah, like, it's just a weird, like, I would never have thought to bother him after the interview. I would have said thanks and never talked to him again, as expected. But he's like, let's hang out. And I'm like, okay.
Uwe Boll told me if I'm in Germany, I have to give him a call to go to this restaurant that he loves with him. Guess what I'm going to do if I'm in Germany?
Yeah, you're going.
Yeah,
you're going.
I'm absolutely. I wanted to, before we get too far along, my co-hosts here do not know of the original piece of history.
You haven't told them anything?
I haven't told them anything.
We were barred from doing research, and that's kind of our thing.
I've never done that because they're really good at it.
So no, they have no information. They're going to be totally shocked by this.
I hope so. They're pretty good about not, but by following the show rules, we all want the show to go right. So I doubt they've done any research on you. But I think let's start with, how did you get without talking about that one thing? Let's see if we could throw ways to throw them a little bit of clue based on your entry into entertainment.
Sure. My entry into entertainment came. I was doing plays and stuff at university, and then had a sketch troupe at the university, and then we started doing comedy downtown in Toronto, and then we got seen by some pretty important people and I got asked to audition for Second City and got hired, and then got an agent from that and started working various television shows.
Wow.
And then when I started working, the Canadian Comedy Channel started broadcasting, and they needed shows. So anyone who had ever pitched a comedy show to one of our networks up here was basically called up and went, "We need your show." And all this nonsense got made. And a bunch of us from our community were just on TV all the time at the beginning of the launch of the Comedy Network up here. That's basically how it got started. Yeah.
That is just amazing. Okay, we'll just do it. Is that how you? So you did a show with is Kevin McDonald?
Yes. So Kevin hosted a sketch sheet. Like, he was the host. It was called Sketch with Kevin McDonald, and Kids in the Hall being a big sketch troupe.
Heroes of mine. Of mine.
And all awesome dudes. I've had the opportunity to meet them all, and they're all lovely.
If you could get me Bruce McCullough, I will. Whatever you need.
Just let me write it down. Bruce. But Kevin hosted the show, being the face, and it was all him showing sketches by new troops at the time. So we all auditioned and got called, and yeah, it was amazing. It was so much fun.
Yeah,
I would love. Kevin, everybody, I literally would come home from work. I worked in a bar, and I'd come home, and they would do late night marathons, including new episodes, and I would just sit there, and that was how I got back to normal, was their show, which is odd to say considering what the show is. Yeah. And even the new episodes are brilliant. There is so much good stuff in their new Amazon Prime special stuff. Is it a special? Is it the show back? I don't know. They didn't.
I don't know.
They
a one-time series.
Either way, I'm glad they got to do it, and it was amazing to see.